The Earth has existed for more than 4.5 billion years, a span of time so vast that the human story barely registers within it. If the entire history of our planet were condensed into a single day, humanity would appear only in the final seconds before midnight. Civilizations, inventions, and modern life, all of it would flash by like a spark at the edge of darkness. This perspective forces us to ask a humbling question. What if humans are not the culmination of Earth's story, but merely a fleeting phase, a chapter destined to be replaced, erased, or transformed by forces far greater than ourselves? To explore this idea, we must step back and imagine Earth not as a backdrop for human existence, but as the main character in its own unfolding drama. For billions of years before us, continents shifted, oceans formed, and life evolved in endless variety. Dinosaurs ruled for over 160 million years, only to vanish in a geological instant. Mammals rose afterward, adapting to climates and catastrophes, long before our ancestors appeared. The record of time suggests a pattern. Dominance is temporary, and every form of life eventually yields to change. Humanity, despite its achievements, may be no exception. This possibility unsettles because we often think of ourselves as the center of history, the pinnacle of evolution. Our cities, technologies, and cultures feel monumental within the span of a human lifetime. But in the deep time of Earth, they are fragile, as transient as the coral reefs that bloom and fade, or the ice sheets that expand and retreat. What feels permanent to us may be little more than a passing phase, a momentary flourish in Earth's long and patient cycle of creation and renewal. There are signs everywhere that Earth's story will continue without us. The climate shifts, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, reshaping the landscapes we take for granted. Species vanish in silence, while others emerge to fill new roles. Even the air we breathe, once toxic to early forms of life, has changed countless times to suit whatever creatures dominated at the moment. If humans disappear tomorrow, Earth will not mourn. It will adapt, evolve, and carry on its narrative as it always has, indifferent to whether we were here or not. Yet within this perspective lies a strange kind of comfort. To see ourselves as a phase is not to diminish our value, but to place us in the larger context of life. We are part of a continuum, linked to everything that came before and everything that will follow. Our presence may be temporary, but it is significant in its own time, just as the reign of the Ammonites or the flowering of the first forest was significant in theirs. Each phase is both transient and essential, shaping the conditions for what comes next. So we begin with this humbling yet fascinating thought. Perhaps humanity is not the final word in Earth's story, but a passing chapter destined to give way to something else. The question is not whether this will happen, it almost certainly will, if history is any guide, but what it means for us now. To live with this awareness is to see our world differently, not as something we own or control, but as something we share for a moment with a planet that will continue to write its story long after we are gone. When we widen our lens to view Earth's history as a whole, the scale of our presence becomes even clearer. For nearly 4 billion years, life evolved without us, diversifying into endless forms that thrived, vanished, and gave way to others. The first single-celled organisms appeared in ancient seas long before the continents we recognize today even existed. Entire ecosystems flourished and disappeared in cycles that spanned millions of years. Against this backdrop, the human story, stretching back only a few 100,000 years, seems astonishingly brief, like a single ripple on an ocean that has no end. Consider the Cambrian explosion more than 500 million years ago, when complex life suddenly proliferated in the seas. For tens of millions of years, creatures unlike anything alive today dominated the oceans. Later, the dinosaurs reigned for a length of time so great that from their first rise to their extinction is nearly 800 times longer than the entirety of recorded human history. Even after they vanished, countless other species rose and fell before humans appeared. Each phase felt permanent while it lasted, yet each was only temporary. This perspective suggests that humanity's sense of permanence may be an illusion born of short memory. Our modern achievements often feel like monuments immune to time. Skyscrapers that pierce the clouds, satellites orbiting the planet, digital networks connecting billions of minds. Yet when placed in the panorama of Earth's history, these marvels are fragile. Erosion will wear down our cities, seas will reclaim our coastlines, and even the most advanced technologies will eventually fail without constant human care. In the long arc of planetary time, human civilization is as transient as the coral reefs that bleach and fade, or the mountain ranges that rise and crumble over millennia. The panorama also shows how change is constant. Ice ages have swept across the continents, reshaping landscapes and forcing species to adapt or die. Volcanoes have darkened skies, asteroids have triggered extinctions, and shifting tectonic plates have rearranged the map of the world over and over again. Humanity's phase is no different. We thrive now, but forces beyond our control continue to move around us. Whether slowly or suddenly, Earth's cycles will one day reshape or erase our presence. And yet, within this vast picture, there is a kind of beauty. To see ourselves as a brief moment in a much larger story is to recognize the grandeur of the whole. We are part of a sequence of life that stretches backward into unimaginable time and forward into futures we will never see. Our impermanence does not diminish our worth. It situates us within something larger, something timeless. Each phase, no matter how brief, leaves its mark on the planet's ongoing narrative. From this initial panorama, one truth emerges. Humanity is not outside of Earth's story, but woven into it. We are not the end, nor the beginning, but a passing expression of life, just as countless others have been. What makes us unique is not our permanence, but the awareness of our place in the panorama, the ability to look at the vastness of time and ask what it means to exist, even briefly, in the unfolding story of Earth. When we think about our origins, it is tempting to see humanity as the natural climax of evolution, the final result of billions of years of trial and error. We marvel at the complexity of our brains, our ability to use language, and our capacity for abstract thought. These traits feel like evidence of permanence, as if we were destined to arrive and destined to remain. Yet the first impression that arises when we place our story against the immensity of Earth's history is one of fragility. Just as countless species appeared and vanished before us, we too may be another phase in the long sequence of life. The emergence of Homo sapiens was itself sudden in geological terms. Only a few 100,000 years ago, our ancestors walked the Earth alongside other human species, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others now extinct. We were not inevitable, nor were we guaranteed to survive. Our survival depended on adaptation, on chance, and on circumstances that could easily have unfolded differently. This reality offers a humbling first impression that our presence here is not the result of destiny, but a probability within the broader tapestry of evolution. Cultural stories often tell a different tale. Many traditions describe humanity as chosen, central, even sacred within the order of the world. Myths position us as the purpose of creation, the masters of nature, or the pinnacle of life's design. These stories are powerful, shaping how we see ourselves, but they may also blind us to a deeper truth. Earth's history has never centered on any single species for long. The impression that we are permanent may be comforting, but it is not supported by the evidence of deep time. Science reinforces this perspective. Fossils reveal ecosystems dominated by trilobites, ammonites, or giant reptiles, each once thriving, each now gone. Their stories remind us that dominance is not equivalent to permanence. The first impression that arises from studying these layers of history is that change is the rule, not the exception. Humanity's dominance, though real today, may be no different from the reign of those that came before us, powerful in its time, but temporary in the larger story of Earth. Even within our relatively brief history, impressions of transience emerge. Civilizations have risen and fallen, leaving behind ruins reclaimed by forests, deserts, and seas. What felt eternal to those who lived within them is now reduced to fragments, reminders that permanence is an illusion. If entire cultures can vanish within a few thousand years, how much more fragile is the species as a whole within the vast scale of planetary time? Our first impression must be that humanity, too, is temporary. And yet, in acknowledging this, there is no despair. Instead, there is clarity. To see ourselves as part of Earth's ongoing cycle is to recognize that our story matters because it is part of something larger. The first impression may be that we are fragile and fleeting, but that does not erase our significance. It reminds us that meaning lies not in permanence, but in participation, in contributing, however briefly, to the great and ongoing story of Earth. From the very beginning of our story, humans sought to understand their place within the larger web of existence. Early hunter-gatherers observed the cycles of the moon, the migration of animals, and the changing of the seasons. These observations were not mere curiosities, they were connections, binding human survival to the rhythms of the planet. The first connections humanity formed were not with machines or monuments, but with Earth itself, an acknowledgement that our existence was interwoven with forces far beyond our control. These connections were practical as well as symbolic. Knowing when the rains would come or when herds would migrate meant the difference between survival and starvation. The first calendars were not carved in stone tablets but written in the skies, in the phases of the moon and the path of the sun. By aligning their lives with these patterns, humans acknowledged, even unconsciously, that they were a phase within Earth's cycles. Our ancestors did not dominate the planet. They adapted to it, fitting themselves into its rhythms like every other species before them. Spiritual traditions also grew from these first connections. Across cultures, humans developed myths that linked their origins to earth and sky alike. They worshipped rivers, mountains, animals, and celestial bodies, recognizing that life itself was sustained by these larger forces. In doing so, they placed themselves not above nature, but within it. The stories of gods, spirits, and ancestors were often reflections of the environment, reminders that humanity's fate was inseparable from the Earth's. As societies evolved, the connections deepened into agriculture, architecture, and art. Farmers learned to work with the soil, timing planting and harvest to the turning of the seasons. Builders aligned monuments with solstices, embedding the cycles of time into stone. Artists painted animals, storms, and stars, preserving the sense that humanity was never alone but always part of a larger system. These cultural achievements were not just human inventions. They were responses to Earth's rhythms, attempts to mirror and honor the forces that sustained life. Yet these connections also carried a warning. Just as humans relied on Earth demanded respect. When societies overreached, cutting too many trees, depleting soil, or ignoring climate, they faltered. Civilizations rose and fell depending on how well they maintained balance with the natural systems around them. These early lessons revealed a truth we still grapple with today, that humanity is not the master of Earth, but one of its many participants, subject to the same laws of change and impermanence as all life. In these first connections, we see humanity's role more clearly. We are not separate from the story of Earth. We are embedded in it. Our beginnings were shaped not by control, but by adaptation, by learning to live within the rhythms of a planet that had existed for billions of years before us. To recognize these connections is to acknowledge that, from the start, humans were never the authors of Earth's story, only a brief phase within its unfolding narrative. The environments in which humans first evolved played a decisive role in shaping our perception of existence. Early humans lived within vast savannas, dense forests, and shifting coastlines, landscapes that demanded constant adaptation. Every horizon was both opportunity and threat. Food, shelter, and survival were tied directly to the character of the land. In these surroundings, humans began to sense that their lives were temporary expressions of a world that was far older and far stronger than they were. Atmosphere added another layer to this awareness. The cycle of days and nights, marked by the rising and setting of the sun, became the first measure of time. Storms swept across plains, reminding humans of forces beyond their control. The silence of clear nights revealed skies so dense with stars that the universe itself felt close, pressing upon their imagination. In this atmosphere of vastness and fragility, humans recognized that they were small, temporary, and dependent on powers greater than themselves. Natural environments also left permanent marks on human culture. In deserts, survival depended on reverence for water, and so myths often spoke of divine rivers and sacred wells. In colder climates, fire became central, not only for warmth but as a symbol of life itself. Mountain ranges inspired awe, often viewed as dwelling places of gods or ancestors. Each environment shaped belief systems, rituals, and social structures, reinforcing the idea that humanity was woven into Earth's story rather than standing apart from it. Atmosphere was not only physical, but emotional. The vastness of skies, the rhythm of rain, the changing colors of landscapes through the seasons, all evoked wonder. For early humans, these were not just aesthetic experiences. They were signals of belonging. The environment communicated with them in patterns and moods, teaching that their phase of existence was dependent on respecting and interpreting the Earth's signs. Without these lessons, survival was impossible. Even today, remnants of this awareness remain. Cities rise where rivers flow. Societies flourish in fertile valleys, and we continue to align our lives with cycles of climate and weather. Despite our technology, the environment continues to remind us of our vulnerability. Floods, droughts, earthquakes, and storms all underscore the same truth that early humans recognized. We are not permanent masters of this planet, but participants in its shifting atmosphere. Through environment and atmosphere, humans first learned humility. These forces revealed that Earth was not a passive stage for human drama, but the central actor in its own story. Our ancestors lived within its moods, adapted to its rhythms, and acknowledged its power. In doing so, they sensed what we are now rediscovering. That humanity is only one phase in a planet's tale that is far older, richer, and more enduring than our brief presence upon it. At the heart of every exploration lies a question, and in this case, it is both simple and profound. What if humans are just a phase in Earth's story? This question challenges the way we see ourselves. We often assume humanity to be the main character, the purpose of the planet's long unfolding narrative. But when we place our history within the context of deep geological time, the possibility arises that our presence is temporary, one among countless chapters, destined eventually to close. This central question pushes against our natural tendency towards self-importance. Civilizations are built on the belief that they will endure, yet history shows that none have lasted forever. If even mighty empires fall within centuries, what does that say about the species as a whole across millennia? The idea that we are a fleeting phase does not deny our achievements, but it does strip away illusions of permanence. It suggests that Earth will continue its story regardless of whether we remain part of it. The question also forces us to consider our relationship with the planet. If humanity is temporary, what responsibility do we bear during our time here? Are we caretakers of the Earth, preparing it for what comes next? Or are we disruptors, accelerating our own decline through actions that destabilize the systems that sustain us? Seeing ourselves as a phase reframes our choices. They are not about controlling the planet, but about coexisting with it while we can. Science gives weight to this perspective. Extinction is not rare in Earth's history. It is the rule. More than 99% of all species that ever lived are now gone. Some disappeared through sudden catastrophes. Others faded slowly as the environment shifted. Humanity, despite its intelligence and adaptability, is not exempt from these forces. The central question asks us to imagine what it means to live knowing that our phase, too, may one day end. Yet the question is not only about endings. It is also about continuity. Each phase in Earth's history has prepared the ground for what follows. The rise of mammals after the dinosaurs, the flowering of plants after earlier extinctions, the emergence of complex life from simpler forms. If humans are only a phase, then we are also part of this chain, shaping conditions for whatever comes next. The central question is not whether we will last forever, but what legacy our phase will leave behind. Ultimately, this question does not diminish us, it contextualizes us. To ask whether humans are just a phase is to accept humility in the face of Earth's vast story. It is to see ourselves as contributors, not owners, as participants in a narrative that stretches far before and far beyond us. And within this awareness lies both challenge and comfort. Challenge, because it strips us of illusions. Comfort, because it assures us that even in our impermanence, we belong to the great unfolding tale of life on Earth. One of the most compelling details that supports the idea of humanity as a phase is the history of extinctions. Earth has experienced at least 5 mass extinction events, each of which reshaped life dramatically. The most famous, caused by an asteroid impact 66 million years ago, ended the age of the dinosaurs and cleared the way for mammals to rise. Each extinction event demonstrates a powerful truth. Dominance is temporary. No matter how widespread or successful a species becomes, it can vanish when conditions change. Humanity, despite our intelligence, remains subject to the same law. Consider the Permian extinction, often called the Great Dying, which occurred about 252 million years ago. Nearly 90% of all marine species and 70% of land species were wiped out. Entire ecosystems collapsed, leaving the planet scarred and nearly lifeless. Yet life returned, not in the same forms, but in new ones better adapted to the altered world. The detail that matters here is clear. Earth's story has always been one of phases, with life appearing, flourishing, and disappearing, only to be replaced by something else. Humanity's phase, no matter how advanced, fits within this same pattern. Another detail lies in the fossil record of hominids themselves. For most of human history, Homo sapiens were not alone. We coexisted with Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other species that shared similar traits and abilities. They, too, built tools, created art, and buried their dead with rituals. And yet, all of them are gone. Our species survived, but survival was not guaranteed. This detail highlights that even within the human branch of the evolutionary tree, permanence has never existed. Species rise, adapt, and eventually vanish. The pace of change today adds urgency to this perspective. Climate change, biodiversity loss, and resource depletion are accelerating in ways that strain the resilience of human societies. Civilizations in the past collapsed when they exceeded the limits of their environments, from the fall of the Mayan kingdoms to the decline of Mesopotamian city-states. Our modern world is larger and more complex, but it faces the same vulnerability. The detail is unavoidable. Our dependence on Earth's systems ties our future directly to their stability, and those systems are shifting rapidly. Technology, often seen as humanity's safeguard, also reflects this impermanence. Satellites, computers, and machines are fragile without constant maintenance. Left unattended, they degrade quickly. Archaeological sites of recent centuries already show how fast steel corrodes, concrete crumbles, and glass shatters. While we imagine our achievements as permanent, the detail of material decay reminds us otherwise. In the long timeline of Earth, even our greatest constructions will vanish as surely as ancient forests and coral reefs once did. This first specific detail, the inevitability of change and extinction, grounds the central question in reality. It shows us that phases are not exceptions, but the rule. Humanity's intelligence may extend our time, but it does not exempt us from the cycle. We are part of Earth's story, subject to the same forces that shaped and erased countless species before us. To recognize this is not to diminish humanity, but to understand it in context, as one more brilliant, fleeting phase in the vast history of life on Earth. When we expand the detail of extinction into the larger context of Earth's history, a striking pattern emerges. Life on this planet has never been static. It is a dynamic, ever-changing process shaped by forces that operate on scales far beyond human comprehension. From the slow drift of continents to the sudden impact of asteroids, Earth's story has always been one of creation, transformation, and renewal. To view humanity as an exception to this pattern would be to ignore the overwhelming evidence written across billions of years. In this broader context, the rise and fall of dominant species appears natural, even necessary. Each extinction event, while catastrophic for those who live through it, clear the way for new forms of life to thrive. Without the asteroid that ended the dinosaurs, mammals, and eventually humans might never have risen to prominence. This perspective reframes extinction not only as an ending, but as a transition. Humanity, too, may serve as a bridge between what came before and what will follow, part of a larger cycle of transformation rather than the final destination. Civilizations provide another layer to this context. The ruins of once mighty empires remind us that even within humanity's short phase, impermanence is constant. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Maya, and countless others rose to extraordinary heights, only to collapse under pressures of climate, conflict, or mismanagement. Today's global civilization feels different because of its scale and technology, but when set in Earth's larger context, it is simply another phase, one that may last centuries or millennia, but not forever. The natural environment underscores this reality. Earth's climate has shifted from icehouse to greenhouse states, from frozen expanses to lush jungles, often in relatively short spans of geological time. Species that once thrived under one climate vanished when conditions shifted. Our current challenges with global warming highlight how vulnerable we are to the same forces. In context, it becomes clear humanity does not control Earth's rhythms. We are swept along by them. Even our achievements in science and technology, which feel monumental, shrink when placed against this backdrop. The internet, space travel, and global infrastructure are recent and fragile compared to the enduring processes of geology and biology. Plate tectonics will outlast skyscrapers. Rivers will continue to carve valleys long after dams have crumbled. The context of deep time reduces our triumphs to temporary experiments, remarkable but not immune to Earth's greater forces. This expansion into context transforms the central question into something larger. Humanity is not separate from the cycles of Earth but fully embedded within them. Our story, with all its brilliance and fragility, is one phase among many, shaped by the same rules that have governed life for billions of years. To understand this is to see ourselves not as masters of the planet, but as participants in a process that will continue long after our chapter is closed. When we place humanity within the framework of deep time, our story shrinks to almost nothing. Earth has existed for 4.5 billion years, and during most of that span, humans were not present. If the planet's history were compressed into a single calendar year, complex multicellular life would not appear until mid-November, dinosaurs would dominate until Christmas, and humans would emerge only in the final minutes of December 31st. Everything we call history, agriculture, empires, technology, would occupy only a few seconds before midnight. This perspective alters how we think about permanence. To us, 10,000 years of civilization feels monumental. Yet on the scale of deep time, it is less than the blink of an eye. Mountain ranges rise and erode in cycles that dwarf the entire human story. Oceans advance and retreat, ice sheets spread and vanish, all while life adapts and reshapes itself again and again. Against such vast cycles, the human phase is short, fragile, and inevitably temporary. Fossil evidence reinforces this truth. Trilobites thrived in oceans for over 250 million years, leaving behind vast records of their existence, only to disappear completely. Dinosaurs, too, flourished for over 160 million years before vanishing in a geological instant. By comparison, Homo sapiens have existed for less than 300,000 years. Our species is still in its infancy relative to these giants of time. The temporal perspective suggests that expecting humanity to last forever ignores the lessons written across Earth's strata. Time also reveals the inevitability of change. Every dominant life form in Earth's history eventually yielded to something new. Not even the most adaptive creatures have endured unchanged. Whether by slow environmental shifts or sudden catastrophes, phases always end. To believe that humanity is exempt from this rule is to misunderstand the very nature of time itself. Our presence here is remarkable, but it is not eternal. Yet there is value in seeing ourselves through this lens. Recognizing our place in deep time does not strip us of meaning. It expands our understanding of what meaning is. We are not the final act of Earth's story, but current expression of its ongoing creativity. Just as forests replaced swamps and mammals replaced reptiles, something will eventually follow us. Our significance lies not in how long we last, but in the role we play while we are here. In the temporal perspective, humans are not the masters of time, but its brief companions. The seconds we occupy on Earth's clock are filled with brilliance, art, knowledge, culture, imagination, but they remain seconds nonetheless. To acknowledge this is to embrace humility and to see clearly that we are only one chapter in a book written across billions of years, a chapter destined, like all others, to close. When we shift from the scale of time to the scale of space, another perspective emerges. Earth is not uniform. It is a mosaic of environments, climates, and ecosystems that have shaped humanity in different ways. Across deserts, mountains, jungles, and coastlines, the story of human existence unfolds differently, yet everywhere it bears the same underlying truth. Permanence is an illusion. Just as the land itself changes, so too do the societies that rise upon it. Consider the deserts of North Africa, where once thriving civilizations carved their presence into stone. Today, the ruins of Egypt still stand, but around them stretches a landscape that has swallowed countless other human efforts. In South America, jungles cover the remnants of Mayan cities once filled with life. Across Asia, forgotten kingdoms lie buried beneath sand and soil, hidden from view until rediscovered by archaeologists. Each space tells the same story. Human phases leave marks, but the Earth eventually reclaims them. Even our great urban centers are not immune. Coastal cities, from New York to Shanghai, are built upon shifting shorelines. Rising seas and changing climates threaten to redraw maps we consider permanent. Mountain communities face erosion and landslides, while regions dependent on rivers are vulnerable to their shifting courses. Geography itself reminds us that no settlement is eternal. The spaces humans occupy are only borrowed, shaped by forces far older and more enduring than we are. The diversity of cultures also reflects this spatial impermanence. From nomadic tribes that moved with the seasons to empires that stretch across continents, humanity has always been in motion, responding to the demands of geography. Cultures flourished where resources allowed and declined when the environment shifted. Space, like time, acts as both cradle and crucible, creating opportunities but also enforcing limits. Humanity's presence is scattered, adapted to the conditions of the moment, never fixed forever in one form. Nature offers countless reminders of this truth. Forests expand and retreat, deserts grow and shrink, rivers carve valleys, and volcanoes create new land. These transformations occur regardless of human presence, shaping the landscapes we inhabit and, in time, erasing the evidence of our stay. The spatial perspective teaches us that Earth's surface is in constant motion and that humanity's imprints, though meaningful now, will one day fade as landscapes transform. In viewing Earth spatially, we understand that no corner of the planet guarantees permanence. The ruins hidden in jungles, the relics buried in deserts, the cities threatened by oceans, all point to the same reality. Humanity's story is deeply tied to place, but no place will preserve us forever. Just as species before us occupied spaces that are now unrecognizable, so too will our phase leave traces that the Earth, in its patience, will eventually reclaim. Not all of the forces that shape Earth's story are visible. Some of the most decisive are unseen, working quietly beneath the surface or beyond the edge of perception. Climate patterns, shifting microbes, and geological pressures have steered the course of life for billions of years. Humanity, despite our technology and awareness, remains subject to these invisible forces. They remind us that our presence here is fragile, that we are not separate from Earth's processes but woven into them. Climate is perhaps the most obvious example. We cannot see the jet streams, ocean currents, or greenhouse gases with the naked eye, yet they determine the stability of entire civilizations. A few degrees of temperature change can decide whether crops flourish or fail, whether coastlines expand or retreat. Ice ages, droughts, and sudden climate shifts have ended cultures before, and they will continue to shape human survival. Climate is an invisible sculptor, carving phases of history that no empire or technology can fully control. Diseases are another hidden force. Microscopic organisms, invisible to the eye, have altered the trajectory of societies in profound ways. The Black Death reshaped Europe's population, smallpox devastated the Americas, and modern pandemics remind us how vulnerable we remain. Viruses and bacteria existed billions of years before us, and will remain long after. They evolve faster than we can adapt, ensuring that humanity's story, like that of all species, is constantly negotiated with invisible companions. Beneath our feet, geological forces move slowly yet relentlessly. Tectonic plates drift, earthquakes strike without warning, and volcanoes erupt, altering climates and landscapes in an instant. Though largely unseen in daily life, these forces have decided where humans can build and where they cannot, which regions flourish and which collapse. They are reminders that the Earth itself is alive with hidden motion, and our phase is lived upon a foundation that shifts with time. Even within us, invisible forces play their role. The genetic code that shapes our bodies mutates quietly, carrying the potential for adaptation or decline. Evolution continues, whether we acknowledge it or not, altering who we are over generations. The very processes that gave rise to humans will, eventually, change us into something else, or lead us toward extinction. Biology, like geology and climate, is a force that works silently, but with consequences that span epochs. Taken together, these invisible forces show that humanity's fate is never entirely in our hands. We are influenced by systems larger, smaller, and older than ourselves, systems that have guided life since its beginning. Just as they shaped the rise and fall of species before us, they will shape our future. Their quiet persistence reinforces the central idea. Humans are not the authors of Earth's story, but fleeting phase written by forces that move unseen, yet unrelenting across the ages. From the turning of the Earth on its axis to the slow orbit around the sun, natural rhythms have always governed life. Day and night, light and darkness, warmth and cold. These cycles shape not only ecosystems but also human existence. Our sleep, our work, and even our cultural rituals are aligned with these patterns. Yet these rhythms also remind us of a larger truth. Everything moves in cycles, nothing remains fixed. If the very planet moves in endless repetition, it follows that human presence too is part of a cycle, a phase destined to give way to something else. The seasons illustrate this lesson clearly. Spring brings renewal, summer abundance, autumn decline, and winter rest. Civilizations have mirrored these rhythms in their calendars, harvests, and traditions. Festivals marked planting and reaping, solstices and equinoxes. These natural cycles taught humans from the beginning that life flows in phases, and that no phase lasts forever. Our existence as a species may follow the same rule, flourishing for a time, reaching a peak, and eventually receding into history. Ocean tides, governed by the pull of the moon, offer another rhythm. For millennia, coastal societies have depended on the ebb and flow of water for fishing, farming, and trade. The tides are predictable, yet their constancy depends on motion and change. Nothing about them is permanent. They rise and fall endlessly. In this way, the tides act as a metaphor for humanity itself, powerful in its moment, but always in motion, always part of a larger cycle that cannot be stopped. Even Earth's deeper rhythms reflect this transience. Ice ages come and go, glaciers advancing and retreating with regularity over tens of thousands of years. Forests spread and contract, deserts grow and shrink, oceans rise and fall. These natural pulses occur on scales far larger than human history, yet they reveal that change is the only constant. Humanity's time fits within these broader rhythms, a brief variation in the planet's long symphony of change. Cultural expressions also echo these natural rhythms. Myths of birth, death, and rebirth often reflect the cycles of seasons and celestial patterns. Architecture, too, aligns with the sun's path, embedding rhythms into stone. By shaping their lives around cycles, early humans acknowledged what modern societies often forget. We are not separate from the patterns of the earth. We live within them, and our story will eventually follow their logic. Through natural rhythms, the planet teaches a quiet lesson. Permanence is an illusion, and phases are inevitable. Just as day yields to night and winter gives way to spring, humanity too will yield in time. Our role is not to escape these rhythms, but to live within them, to recognize that our species is one verse in Earth's repeating song, a verse that will eventually fade as others take its place. The greatest truth revealed by Earth's history is also the hardest for humanity to accept. The future of our species is uncertain. We do not know how long this phase will last. The fossil record offers countless examples of dominant species that thrive for millions of years before vanishing, often suddenly. Humans, by comparison, are recent arrivals, and our achievements, though impressive, are fragile in the face of the forces that shape the planet. The mystery lies not in whether humanity will eventually fade, but in how and when. This uncertainty is both unsettling and fascinating. On one hand, it confronts us with vulnerability. Civilizations collapse, climates shift, and disasters strike without warning. On the other, it invites curiosity. What will follow us? Just as the dinosaurs gave way to mammals and early mammals paved the way for primates, humanity may be preparing the conditions for new forms of life, biological, technological, or something entirely different. The mystery is not simply about endings, but about what transitions may unfold. Part of the mystery is our inability to predict. Science can model probabilities, but Earth's history is filled with surprises. Few could have foreseen the asteroid that ended the age of reptiles, or the sudden Cambrian explosion that filled the seas with new life. In the same way, humanity may be overtaken by an event beyond imagination, a genetic shift, a climate transformation, a technological turning point, or even a self-inflicted collapse. The future remains hidden, as it always has. The mystery also challenges the way we define meaning. If humanity is temporary, does that reduce our significance? Or does it amplify it because our time is finite and precious? Civilizations of the past built monuments, wrote stories, and pursued knowledge knowing that individuals would not live forever. Perhaps humanity as a species stand in the same position, creating, exploring, and imagining while aware that our existence is limited within the grander story of Earth. This enigma gives shape to our imagination. It fuels myths of apocalypse, visions of utopia, and scientific quests for longevity. The awareness of impermanence has always pushed humanity to strive, to innovate, to leave a mark. In this way, the mystery of our eventual fate is not paralyzing, it is motivating. It reminds us that while we cannot control the ultimate arc of Earth's story, we can influence the phase we inhabit. The mystery of humanity's place in Earth's story remains unresolved, and perhaps it always will. But in that uncertainty lies a deeper lesson. We are not meant to know the ending. We are meant to live the present, to learn from the past, and to prepare the ground for whatever future may come. Like every phase before us, ours will close. The mystery is not a flaw in our knowledge. It is the essence of being part of a story larger than ourselves. Earth's history is filled with contrasts, and humanity is caught in the balance between them. We see ourselves as powerful, shaping landscapes, splitting atoms, and reaching into space. Yet we are also fragile, vulnerable to diseases, natural disasters, and the slow shifts of climate. This tension between strength and weakness defines our phase. We are capable of extraordinary feats, but we remain bound to the same limits that govern all life on the planet. The contrast between permanence and transience is perhaps the most striking. Human beings build monuments in stone, carve histories into tablets, and launch satellites into orbit, all in the hope of lasting beyond our lifetimes. Yet erosion, decay, and time patiently erase these marks. Even the greatest works of human civilization will eventually fall, just as mountains erode and rivers change course. Permanence is a goal, but transience is the rule, and together they create the harmony of Earth's ongoing story. There is also the contrast between creation and destruction. Humanity has mastered the ability to shape the environment, building cities, harnessing energy, and cultivating food on a scale unimaginable to our ancestors. But the same ingenuity has also led to deforestation, extinctions, and pollution. These dual forces coexist, revealing that our phase is not one of pure progress or decline, but a mixture of both. Creation and destruction are inseparable aspects of our presence, just as they have been for every other life form in Earth's history. On a cultural level, contrasts shape how we understand ourselves. Myths and religions often describe humans as central and divine, while science situates us as one species among millions, bound by natural laws. This duality creates both conflict and richness in our worldview. We are unique in awareness, yet ordinary in biology. We are both a miracle and a phase, both exceptional and temporary. The harmony lies in accepting both truths at once. Even within Earth's processes, harmony emerges from contrast. Volcanoes destroy landscapes but create fertile soil. Storms devastate regions but replenish ecosystems. Extinctions erase species but open opportunities for new life to evolve. Humanity's presence, too, is a contrast. It has brought devastation and beauty, collapse and innovation. Our phase fits the larger pattern of Earth's balance, where creation and destruction are not opposites but partners in the cycle of change. By seeing harmony in contrasts, we begin to understand our role more clearly. We are not failures for being temporary, nor are we gods for being creative. We are a mixture of opposites, like everything else on Earth. The balance of power and fragility, permanence and impermanence, creation and destruction is not a flaw. It is the very rhythm of the planet's story. Humanity's phase, like all others, is defined not by choosing one side of the contrast, but by existing in a space where both meet. Nothing in Earth's story exists in isolation. Every moment, every life form, every change is tied to countless others in a web of interactions. Humanity is no exception. Our species emerged from evolutionary pressures shaped by shifting climates, geological transformations, and the presence of other organisms. We are not separate from these forces, but the product of them. This interconnectedness suggests that our phase is not unique in its dependence. It is part of the same network that has guided every other chapter of Earth's history. Interactions with the environment reveal this clearly. Human survival has always depended on ecosystems: rivers to provide water, soils to grow crops, forests to balance climate, and oceans to regulate weather. When these systems flourish, we prosper. When they collapse, we falter. Civilizations from Mesopotamia to the Maya remind us that failure to respect environmental connections often leads to decline. Our phase, for all its sophistication, remains tethered to the same web of natural interactions as those before us. Connections also extend across species. The domestication of plants and animals allowed humans to build agriculture and settlements, reshaping the path of our societies. Microbes, often invisible, have influenced our history through disease and symbiosis. Pollinators like bees sustain our food supply, while countless microorganisms within our bodies sustain our health. We are interdependent with life at every scale, and our fate is inseparable from theirs. If they falter, we falter. These connections make clear that humanity's story is not an isolated one, but part of a much broader ecological narrative. Cosmic forces add another dimension to these connections. The energy that fuels life comes from the sun, and the stability of our planet is influenced by the moon's gravitational pull. Even catastrophic events, asteroids and solar flares, have shaped evolution in profound ways. Humanity's phase, like all others, depends on the balance of these distant forces. We may gaze at the stars with curiosity, but we are also bound to them, reliant on their rhythms for our very existence. Interactions are also cultural. Knowledge, ideas, and traditions pass between societies, spreading innovations and shaping destinies. The Silk Road carried not only goods but languages, philosophies, and diseases. The modern world, interconnected through technology, magnifies these exchanges. But just as interactions create resilience, they also spread vulnerabilities. Economic collapses, pandemics, and environmental crises remind us that in a connected world, fragility is shared. Humanity's phase is woven not only into Earth systems, but also into the global network of our own making. To see humanity as part of this intricate web is to understand that our story is not separate but integrated. We are one thread in a vast network, influenced by countless others and influencing in return. Interactions and connections ensure that no phase stands alone. When our phase eventually ends, the web will continue, reshaped but unbroken, carrying forward Earth's story into forms and futures we cannot yet imagine. Every journey of thought eventually reaches a moment of pause, a place where the focus shifts from exploring countless details to reflecting on their larger meaning. In considering whether humans are just a phase in Earth's story, we have looked at extinctions, climates, cultures, and the cycles that shape all life. Now the narrative moves into a new rhythm, not to introduce new evidence, but to contemplate what these patterns reveal about our place within the planet's unfolding history. The transition begins with humility. We are reminded that the world did not begin with us and will not end with us. Life has taken countless forms before our arrival, and it will continue to evolve after we are gone. This perspective does not lessen the value of human existence. It places it within a broader context. Just as forests, oceans, and mountains are shaped by cycles of growth and decay, humanity too is bound to these rhythms. Recognizing this is the first step in seeing ourselves as participants rather than masters of Earth's story. At the same time, the transition invites us to reflect on responsibility. If we are temporary, then what kind of mark will our phase leave behind? The Earth will endure regardless, but the legacy of humanity will influence what follows. The way we treat ecosystems, the resources we consume, and the changes we trigger will ripple into the future, shaping the conditions for the next phase of life. Our impermanence does not absolve us of responsibility, it heightens it. This point of transition also emphasizes perspective. Until now, we have looked outward at the forces that define our fragility. Now we begin to look inward, asking what meaning can be drawn from that fragility. The question shifts from, will humanity last, to, what does it mean to live knowing that we will not? This reframing turns the discussion from prediction to reflection, from external evidence to internal awareness. There is a stillness in this realization. Just as twilight signals the end of day without bringing fear, the awareness of our transience need not bring despair. Instead, it can bring clarity, a recognition that life's value is not measured by permanence, but by the depth of its participation in the moment it is given. The transition is not a conclusion, but a change in tone, guiding us from curiosity into contemplation. And so we arrive at this turning point. We do not leave behind the details of extinction, climate, or culture, but we carry them forward as part of a broader reflection. The evidence remains important, but now it serves to illuminate the deeper question of meaning. Humanity's phase may be brief, but within its brevity lies its significance. From here, the journey begins to seek closure, not in answers, but in perspective, in the quiet understanding that we are part of a story far larger than ourselves. As we look back on the path we have followed, a clearer picture begins to emerge. We started by considering the brevity of humanity's presence in comparison to Earth's long history. We traced patterns of extinction, the shifting of climates, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the ever-present cycles of renewal and decline. At each step, the evidence pointed toward the same conclusion. Humanity, for all its achievements and brilliance, is a temporary phase in a story that stretches far beyond us. The panorama of time revealed just how short our presence has been. Dinosaurs ruled for millions of years. Trilobites thrived for hundreds of millions more. Civilizations we now study as ancient are younger than a single geological heartbeat. Against this scale, our story shrinks to a fleeting spark. Yet this spark, though small, is not meaningless. It glows within the darkness of deep time, carrying its own value, just as every phase before us has carried its own. The perspective of space reminded us that no place on Earth is permanent. Cities rise along rivers that eventually change course, temples crumble into jungles, and coastlines shift with the tides. Human marks on the land are powerful for a moment, but fragile in the long run. Geography reclaims what is borrowed, weaving our efforts back into the larger fabric of Earth's surface. Invisible forces and natural rhythms deepen the lesson. Climate, disease, tectonics, and cycles of day and season all shape human life in ways we cannot escape. They remind us that, like every other species, we are embedded in systems beyond our control. We can adapt and influence, but we cannot escape. Our phase is defined as much by these forces as by our own choices. Through contrast, we saw the balance of power and fragility, creation and destruction. Through connections, we recognize that we are not isolated but interdependent on ecosystems, on other species, and even on cosmic forces. Humanity's story is one thread woven into a vast tapestry, one phase connected to countless others. Our uniqueness lies not in our permanence, but in our awareness of the larger whole. This summary does not offer final answers, but it does provide clarity. Humanity is not the climax of Earth's story, but a part of its unfolding. Our time is short, yet filled with meaning. To see ourselves as a phase is to embrace both humility and perspective, to recognize that our presence is valuable not because it lasts forever, but because it participates in a story that began long before us and will continue long after. When we widen the frame once more, the question of humanity as a phase becomes not just scientific, but philosophical. Earth's record of life shows us the inevitability of change, but imagination allows us to step further, to ask what this means for how we live, how we understand ourselves, and how we prepare for what follows. Science offers patterns and probabilities, while reflection offers meaning. Together, they expand our view, reminding us that the story of humanity is both fragile and profound. To reflect deeply is to recognize that phases are not failures. They are the structure of Earth's story. Forests bloom and vanish, oceans rise and recede, civilizations flourish and collapse. Each phase leaves behind traces that shape the next. Humanity, too, is a builder of bridges. The technologies we create, the knowledge we preserve, and even the mistakes we make will influence the course of life after us. To call ourselves a phase is not to diminish us. It is to place us within the same framework that has guided every other chapter of this planet's narrative. Imagination carries this reflection even further. What might follow after us? Could it be another species, rising slowly as we once did? Could it be artificial intelligences or hybrids of biology and technology, shaped by our inventions? Or could it be life forms born out of changes we cannot predict, creatures adapted to climates and ecosystems that no longer resemble today's world? We cannot know, but to imagine is to accept that Earth's story will continue in ways beyond our foresight. This expanded reflection also invites humility about our place in the cosmos. Earth is only one planet among billions, orbiting a star that is itself one among countless others. If life phases unfold here, it is reasonable to believe they unfold elsewhere too. Perhaps civilizations have risen and fallen on distant worlds, their stories lost to time just as ours may one day be. Humanity's phase, then, is not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a universal rhythm of emergence and decline. Even our awareness is part of the reflection. Unlike trilobites or dinosaurs, humans can look at Earth's history and wonder about its meaning. We can study fossils, measure stars, and imagine futures we will never see. This ability to reflect does not exempt us from impermanence, but it gives our phase a particular character, a phase of self-awareness, a phase that can contemplate the vastness of time and space while knowing it is temporary. That awareness is itself a contribution to the story. Thus, the expanded reflection brings us back to the core truth. Humanity is temporary, but meaningful. To see ourselves as a phase is to embrace both humility and imagination, science and wonder. We are not the final word in Earth's story, but one of its most remarkable expressions, a chapter that knows it is part of a book far larger than itself. And within that awareness lies our greatest gift, the ability to live consciously, to act responsibly, and to dream beyond our own time. Between every fact we uncover and every theory we propose lies a gap. These gaps, the silences between words, are as revealing as the knowledge itself. In studying Earth's past, we see fossils but not the full story of how those creatures lived. We find ruins but not the voices of the people who built them. In contemplating humanity as a phase, these silences remind us that the story of life is never complete, always fragmented, and always filled with unanswered questions. Silence is not emptiness, it is possibility. The absence of evidence does not erase the truth of what occurred. It simply means that time has hidden it. Trilobites left countless fossils, but most of their lives remain unknown. Dinosaurs dominated for ages, yet we can only speculate about their colors, their sounds, or their social bonds. Humanity, too, will leave silences for future discoverers. Archaeologists millions of years from now, if any exist, may find fragments of our cities but never hear the voices that filled them. Our phase will be remembered in traces, with silence carrying the rest. These silences shape our imagination. In the absence of certainty, we build stories, myths of beginnings, prophecies of endings, and theories that stretch beyond what we can prove. The silence between words invites creativity, reminding us that knowledge is always incomplete. If humanity is just a phase, then much of our phase will eventually dissolve into silence, leaving behind only fragments. That silence is not a failure of memory. It is the natural rhythm of Earth's unfolding story. There is also silence within the present. Forces that govern our future, tectonic shifts, slow climate trends, microscopic mutations, move quietly, unnoticed by most. They shape our destiny without announcing themselves. This invisible silence reminds us that change is constant, even when we cannot hear it. Humanity's phase is surrounded not by dramatic declarations, but by quiet transformations that accumulate over time. On a more personal level, silence also reflects our inability to fully define meaning. Words can describe facts, but they cannot capture the entirety of experience. Our awareness of mortality, our search for purpose, and our confrontation with impermanence all rest partly in silence. These are truths we feel, but cannot fully articulate. The silence between words is where reflection deepens, where we begin to sense what cannot be spoken. Thus, silence itself becomes part of the narrative. It is not a void, but a reminder of the limits of human knowledge and the expansiveness of Earth's story. The silences of history, of nature, and of meaning all point to the same conclusion. That humanity is not the author of the book, but a single voice within it, destined to fade into pauses and gaps as the planet continues to write its tale. In the vast sweep of Earth's history, it is often the smallest details that carry the deepest meaning. A single fossilized shell pressed into ancient stone, a fragment of pottery buried beneath the soil, or a shard of bone preserved in ice. Each of these fragments tells a story. They remind us that civilizations and species do not leave behind their full narratives. Instead, they are remembered through details, fragile traces that survive the slow erosion of time. Humanity, too, will one day be known not by the fullness of our world, but by the remnants we leave behind. Consider the fossils of trilobites, intricate and delicate, showing patterns on their shells that endured for hundreds of millions of years. To us, these details are extraordinary windows into a vanished world. Yet they represent only fragments of what once was. No sound, no movement, no behavior preserved. The beauty lies in what remains, not in what is complete. Humanity's skyscrapers, satellites, or books may become tomorrow's fossils, fragments carrying echoes of a world that once thrived but is gone. Ruins tell the same story. The crumbled stones of Machu Picchu, the buried temples of Angkor, the silent statues of Easter Island, each detail reflects human ambition, belief, and creativity. Yet none of them capture the full life of the civilizations that built them. The songs, the laughter, the fears, the politics, all of these have vanished, leaving behind only symbols carved in stone. One day, our own modern cities may stand in similar silence, their details left as puzzles for others to interpret. Even nature preserves details that speak across time. Rings in ancient trees tell of droughts and floods. Layers of ice hold microscopic bubbles of ancient air, allowing us to breathe the atmosphere of ages past. Coral reefs record chemical changes in the oceans, whispering of shifts that happened long before we arrived. These details, subtle yet enduring, remind us that Earth carries memory not in words but in patterns etched into its own body. Cultural artifacts are another kind of detail. Languages, symbols, and rituals survive even when their original meanings are lost. The beauty of detail is that it both reveals and conceals. It offers glimpses into the past while leaving vast mysteries intact. Humanity's own details, the art we paint, the structures we raise, the digital footprints we leave, may one day serve as fragments for future minds, pieces of a puzzle that will never be fully solved. In appreciating these details, we understand the fragility of our face. We will not be remembered in fullness, but in fragments, just as those before us are. The beauty lies in the fact that these fragments endure it all, carrying across ages the evidence that we were here. In this way, the smallest details become the bridges between phases, binding one era to the next in Earth's ongoing story. Looking toward the future, the question of humanity as a phase becomes more than an abstract thought. It becomes a challenge. If we recognize that our time on Earth is temporary, How should that shape the way we live now? Awareness of impermanence does not free us from responsibility. It intensifies it. Our choices today will determine the kind of world that remains when our phase eventually gives way to the next. Whether that world is damaged or enriched will be part of the legacy we leave behind. Technology often makes us believe that we can escape this cycle. Advances in medicine, engineering, and artificial intelligence suggest the possibility of extending human survival indefinitely. Colonies on other planets are imagined as insurance against Earth's instability. Yet when seen in the scale of Earth's story, even these achievements may be temporary. Other species once dominated with equal confidence, and they, too, disappeared. Technology may stretch our phase, but it cannot remove us from the larger patterns of change. The future also raises the question of succession. If humanity is just a phase, what comes after us? Will it be another species that evolves naturally in our absence? Will our technologies outlive us, creating artificial systems that inherit the planet? Or will Earth, scarred by our actions, reset itself once more, allowing life to flourish in entirely new directions? Each possibility highlights the same truth. The planet's story will continue, with or without us. Climate change is perhaps the most immediate factor shaping that future. Rising temperatures, shifting ecosystems, and mass extinctions remind us that Earth's systems are already responding to our presence. The choices humanity makes in the coming decades will not decide whether Earth survives. It always has, but whether our own phase ends more abruptly than it otherwise might. Looking to the future, the question is not if humanity is temporary, but whether we make that temporariness short and destructive or long and constructive. Culturally, the awareness of impermanence may encourage us to value what we have now. Art, science, relationships, and knowledge all gain urgency when seen against the backdrop of a finite existence. Just as individuals live more fully when they understand mortality, perhaps civilizations can live more wisely when they understand that their time, too, is limited. To look toward the future with this awareness is not to despair, but to live with purpose. Ultimately, the future perspective shows us that being a phase does not reduce humanity's significance. Instead, it gives it context. Our story is one among many, but it is ours to shape while it lasts. The question, then, is not how long we will endure, but how we will spend the time we are given. That is the choice every species faces, and it is the choice that will define the meaning of humanity's place in Earth's vast and continuing story. As the narrative begins to draw toward its end, a sense of closure emerges, not through final answers, but through perspective. We have walked through Earth's immense timeline, tracing extinctions, climates, civilizations, and cycles that reveal the impermanence of all things. Humanity, though remarkable, fits within the same framework, a phase, temporary yet meaningful, destined one day to fade like those that came before. The closure lies not in solving the question, but in recognizing our place within it. This awareness allows us to let go of illusions of permanence. We often imagine our achievements as eternal, our cities, our cultures, our technologies, but in truth, they are fragile. Time will erode stone, silence voices, and transform landscapes. Yet this fragility is not failure. It is the rhythm of Earth's story, a story in which no phase is meant to last forever. To understand this is to see our presence not as diminished, but as part of the same ongoing process that has shaped all life. Closure also comes in the recognition of continuity. Though phases end, the story does not. Just as the extinction of one species allows another to rise, humanity's eventual absence will open space for something new. Our legacy will not be measured only in what we built or destroyed, but in how we influence the conditions for what follows. This continuity ensures that while our phase is temporary, it is never meaningless. It is woven into what comes next. There is comfort in this realization. To see ourselves as a phase is to accept humility without despair. It reminds us that value is not found in eternity, but in participation. We are here now, shaping and being shaped, adding our verse to the larger song of Earth. That awareness transforms closure into peace, a calm acceptance that transience is natural, and that within it, we still matter. Closure also reframes responsibility. If our time is limited, then it is precious. Every choice gains weight when seen against impermanence. The way we care for the planet, for each other, and for knowledge itself becomes part of the legacy we pass on. Whether our phase ends in decline or transition, we can choose how it is remembered. In this way, Closure does not mark the end of action, but the beginning of awareness. Thus, a sense of closure settles gently over the question. Humanity is temporary, but so is every other form of life before us. Our impermanence does not erase our significance. It situates it within the grand continuity of Earth's unfolding story. To accept this is to find peace, not in permanence, but in perspective, in knowing that we belong to something larger, something timeless, something that will endure long after our chapter closes. Picture the Earth not as it is today, but as a vast canvas stretching across time. Beneath shifting skies, continents drift slowly, mountains rise and crumble, oceans expand and retreat. Within this moving landscape, countless species appear and disappear, each leaving faint marks on the planet's memory. Dinosaurs once thundered across plains that are now deserts. Coral reefs once flourished where glaciers now stand. In this panorama, humanity's presence is a bright but brief spark, flickering across a surface that has seen far greater transformations. Imagine walking among ruins reclaimed by nature, where roots twist through stone and birds nest in the walls of forgotten buildings. These remnants remind us that permanence is an illusion. Just as forests reclaim cities, the earth absorbs every trace of what once seemed indestructible. The image is not bleak, but balanced. Life continues, reshaping and reusing, turning endings into beginnings. Humanity's structures, too, will one day fade into this quiet cycle of renewal. Lift your eyes upward and see the night sky. The stars that guided our ancestors still burn with steady light, indifferent to our presence. Civilizations have risen and fallen under these same constellations, their stories preserved only in fragments of memory. To stand beneath the stars is to sense both our fragility and our belonging, to realize that we are a momentary phase within a universe that has existed long before us and will continue long after. Now shift perspective to something smaller, a fossilized shell in a rock, carried by waves onto a shore. To most it seems insignificant, but it is a fragment of life that once thrived, preserved through deep time. One day, pieces of humanity, tools, bones, or even digital records may serve the same role, reminders that we once lived, once created, once wondered. The detail of a single artifact becomes the bridge between phases, connecting past life to future observers. The mental image expands again. Earth itself is a storyteller, patient and unhurried, writing in cycles instead of chapters. Each phase is a verse, each extinction and emergence another stanza in a poem too vast to be finished. Humanity's contribution is one of many, but its brevity does not diminish its beauty. Like a single note in a symphony, our phase resonates for a moment, then fades, making space for the music to continue. This final image invites not despair, but perspective. We are part of a planet that transforms endlessly, a planet that forgets and remembers through stone, water, and sky. Our role is temporary, yet meaningful. To see ourselves this way is to embrace the truth that all things pass, but nothing is wasted. Humanity's spark, like those before and those to come, belongs to the luminous, ongoing story of Earth. In the end, the question remains as compelling as it was at the beginning. What if humans are just a phase in Earth's story? The evidence we have traced, extinctions, cycles, ruins, fossils, and rhythms, all points toward the same conclusion. Every dominant life form before us has come and gone, and every civilization has eventually yielded to time. Humanity, despite its brilliance, is part of this same flow. Our presence is not outside of Earth's story, but fully within it, temporary yet meaningful. This conclusion does not diminish us. Instead, it situates us. To see ourselves as a phase is to recognize that permanence was never promised, and that our value lies not in eternity, but in participation. We are one expression of life's creativity, shaped by invisible forces, sustained by natural rhythms, and connected to countless other forms of existence. Our significance comes not from lasting forever, but from being part of the planet's unfolding narrative while we are here. The epilogue also offers continuity. Just as the dinosaurs gave way to mammals, and ancient forests made space for new ecosystems, humanity will leave behind conditions that shape what follows. Whether we choose to care for or damage those conditions is up to us, but the story will go on regardless. Earth has endured countless transformations, and it will continue to adapt, evolve, and renew long after our phase has ended. What lingers, then, is perspective. Our achievements, our knowledge, and our cultures are remarkable, but they exist within a larger cycle of impermanence. We cannot escape this cycle, but we can embrace it. To know that we are temporary is to live with urgency, to create with intention, and to value the fragile beauty of the moment we inhabit. The awareness of our impermanence does not erase meaning. It creates it. The story of humanity may be brief compared to the span of Earth, but brevity does not equal insignificance. Like every phase before us, ours contributes to the whole. Our technologies, our art, our awareness of the cosmos, all are part of the legacy we leave. Whether remembered in detail or only in fragments, humanity will always have been part of Earth's memory, written into the layers of stone and time. And so the epilogue closes with humility and peace. Humans are a phase, brilliant, fragile, and finite. To understand this is not to despair, but to find our rightful place within Earth's story. We are participants in a grand narrative that began long before us and will continue long after. That story is not diminished by our impermanence. It is enriched by it. For in the vast sweep of time, to exist at all is extraordinary, and to know that existence is fleeting makes it all the more precious.